It's been a busy week in the Inland Northwest, so let's get you caught up with the KREM 2 News Week in Review. I'm Cody Proctor. Thanks for being here with us. Over the next half hour, we'll take a look back at some of the news you might have missed from the past week. So let's get started with one of the biggest stories from the Inland Northwest.
A letter was emailed to patients as well as posted here on the door of the Allergy and Asthma Clinic. Now, the letter goes on to say that the clinic is heartbroken by this decision, and they also list where patients can continue to seek care.
Now, I had an appointment with Dr. England.
The end of the 4th floor. Here in the Rock Point complex is now vacant. After the abrupt closing of the Spokane Allergy and Asthma Clinic, one of only a few clinics of its kind across the Inland Northwest.
I put a lot of money into it to start, and now I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish.
Services patients like Diana Martin drive hours for every week.
I've been getting sicker lately.
Martin says she was here for a normal appointment just 2 days ago, and when she walked in for her follow-up today, she saw the permanent closure notice.
Could it have been notified, in time that we'll be closing and here's your shifting versus boom, we're closed.
But Martin wasn't the only one left in shock.
Just the immediate, rock in your stomach.
Shannon Callant and Mary Murphy say they have been coming here for years. Now they say they have to start back at square one just months away from peak allergy season.
Getting established with a new clinic is always really hard.
I'm concerned about my regular checkups because they're constantly monitoring me.
The letter ends by saying patients can come by the clinic one last time next week to pick up their extracts or injectable serums. The scheduled days will correlate with the patient's last name. A nurse I spoke to, who was also a patient here with the clinic, says there are dangers to giving full serums to patients directly. She says for those who come by to get them next week, get the serums in a refrigerator with the correct temperature provided by the clinic so they can stay stable. Find a provider who can administer as soon as possible so you don't fall behind. And finally, because of how dangerous it can be, do not do these injections by yourself. Multiple patients came by the clinic today, all with the same question.
Why?
The clinic provided how patients can get their medical records. They have to go to a website called Desert River Solutions. However, patients say they are upset with this process because on top of the money they paid for the medication itself, now they also have to pay $25 just to get their records. Now, of course, we have all that information and that letter up on our website, krem.com. In Spokane, Christian Garza, KREM 2 News.
Months after East Adams Rural Healthcare faced a possible closure and/or layoffs due to budget woes, new details are emerging. The chief operating officer for East Adams, Dallas Killian, said an independent audit conducted by an accounting firm based out of Spokane Valley, known as DZA. Documents revealed a loss of $10.5 million between 2022 and 2024. Current leadership revealed previous hospital administrators allegedly concealed deficits, falsified financial documents, and engaged in unauthorized spending. This includes false documents on a federal grant and falsely billed Medicaid and Medicare to the tune of just over $1 million. These discoveries were made in June of 2025, when at the time, the former CFO, whose name is not mentioned in the audit, resigned. This brought the hospital to the brink of closure that same year. The hospital sent what's called a warn notice to the state, telling them they may have to close back in November of last year. Documents also show there are 14 ongoing investigations into fraud at the hospital at the state, federal, and local government level, and 2 rounds of layoffs took place in 2025 to cut expenses. To continue operating, the hospital secured emergency funding and is currently working to settle roughly $5 million in unsecured debt. This, according to the audit, is to avoid filing for bankruptcy. East Adams Health also filed to operate as the state's first rural emergency hospital. This, the audit shows, would be a more sustainable hospital model by adjusting its workforce and lowering payroll expenses. That application has been submitted as of Thursday night. We've reached out to the interim CEO of East Adams, Dan Nita, for comment, but have not heard back. We'll continue following this story as it develops. Connor McAvoy, KREM 2 News.
City leaders say the holiday schedule is always subject to change. However, Juneteenth will no longer be observed as a city holiday.
Plouffe?
Aye.
Luca?
Aye.
Malloy?
Nay, again, not against Columbus Day. Just would like to see them both recognized.
Stigleader? Aye. Mosby?
Aye.
Ziegler?
Nay.
Motion passes. Thank you.
A federal holiday meant to celebrate the end of slavery across America will no longer be recognized here in Post Falls, Idaho.
My own view is that Juneteenth is something that nobody had heard of until 5 years ago and was pushed for political purposes. And so I'm not in favor of having that in.
Mayor Randy Westland called for the change and for the reinstatement of Columbus Day throughout the city,
Which I believe is a more appropriate holiday honoring our American heritage.
However, this viewpoint was not shared unanimously. Council members Joe Malloy and Nathan Ziegler said while they understand wanting to celebrate Columbus Day, they also believe Juneteenth is just as important because it was a pivotal moment with ending slavery across the country.
So I don't know if you would consider doing an every other year type of thing, but I think both are very relevant to our history.
Just because we didn't know about or was more or was made less relevant doesn't make it relevant to today.
Both Malloy and Ziegler pushed for both holidays to be recognized, saying they are not mutually exclusive. Mayor Westland denied that request, with Councilmember Mark Luca adding there are other days to celebrate civil rights, like Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
It's apples and oranges. Why can't everyone be included in the celebration?
James McDay, the founder of the Kootenai County branch of the NAACP, adds this decision does not only affect people today, but generations to come in North Idaho.
Without the representation, we are perpetuating a negative.
Juneteenth commemorates the 1865 announcement of the abolition of slavery in Texas, freeing close to 250,000 slaves. The announcement came 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln emancipated all enslaved African Americans across the country. McDay says with the growing population in North Idaho, now more than ever, cities like Post Falls should be taking steps forward rather than backwards.
Show some respect. That's all I really can say on that, because I feel disrespected by those individuals, like I'm nobody here.
Again, this decision does not affect the federal or state recognition of Juneteenth, just the city's holiday schedule here in Post Falls. In Post Falls, Christian Garza, KREM 2 News.
As we go to break, here's a check of your weekend forecast. Welcome back to the KREM 2 News Week in Review. Each weekend, we walk you through headlines from the past week in the Inland Northwest.
The Spokane waste-to-energy plant is unique, and local lawmakers are fighting for legislation that support both the state's climate goals as well as the facility and the city. Local lawmakers argue that while the state's climate goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions are important, regulations shouldn't be one size fits all, especially considering Spokane is the only city whose solid waste disposal system falls under the CCA.
Because it's one of a kind, we were able to turn it into this mythical thing that we didn't have anywhere in our state, and we have very few across our country and across the world. And, that's where we were at 30 years ago.
Representative Natasha Hill, substitute House Bill 2416's sponsor, says the facility doesn't have the technology to comply with what the Climate Commitment Act requires, and the resulting financial penalties could increase utility costs in Spokane.
So we need to balance out meeting our climate commitment goals with what our ratepayers can afford, especially today and right now, while we're still working on technology that's going to help us address carbon emissions from a plant like this, as well as other facilities.
A study from the Department of Ecology says Spokane's WTE facility provides the greatest net reduction in emissions compared to landfills. The bill sponsors are committed to reducing emissions, but need to support the plant and Spokane residents.
We know affordability is such a big issue right now. We don't want to just say, hey, you're in the Climate Commitment Act now because it's 2027 and you have to meet these benchmarks. But we didn't really give you any tools to get there.
If the bill doesn't pass, Spokane would have to buy credits that offset the facility's emissions, meaning prices could increase as soon as next year. Representative Hill says they do have bipartisan support for the bill. Reporting in Spokane, Caitlin Galloway, KREM 2 News.
The original bill passed out of the Senate late last month, and the governor has said he will sign it into law, but first it needs to pass out of here in the House. And this morning it had its first committee hearing in front of House members. The sponsor of the legislation says he started working on it after seeing how ICE agents were operating around the country and the state last summer.
To me, this is just a fundamental, I think, thing that if you're going to be performing your job as a law enforcement official, whether it's local, state, or federal, the public needs to know exactly who you are and not shielding and hiding your identity.
What steps are being taken when we have people that are not following the law and are putting these officers, whether they are state or federal, in danger by putting their faces on the media, social media?
We heard that same sentiment from Republicans over in the Senate as well, but that did not stop the bill from passing there. Police organizations do have concerns about the bill. They're not against it. They don't mind making their officers reveal their identities. They say they already do that, but there are some concerns about undercover officers and perhaps officers who want to wear facial coverings in bad weather. The bill's sponsor says he would be open to that. At this point, it looks like this bill has enough momentum to pass this session, which ends on March 12th. In Olympia, Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
Thanks for joining KREM 2 News this weekend. I'm Cody Proctor. Right now, we're taking a look back at some of the news stories from the past week.
Construction crews here at the Skyway Cafe say at least 3 times a day people come by this front entrance asking, is this restaurant back open? Well, the fire here last winter grounded the restaurant indefinitely, but now the owners tell me they're aiming for a June takeoff.
At the Skyway Cafe, the sounds of clanking dishes and happy customers are now replaced by it's the sound of the cafe coming back to life. And for owner Sandy Melter,
I hear joy. Yay!
It's been more than a year since a fire destroyed Spokane's iconic Felts Field restaurant. Every day since, the owners have been working to bring back that familiar sound of community.
For 14 months, I've been feeling that.
Feeling what?
Anxious, overly anxious, excited.
And in that time, what Sandy has really missed:
cooking. I am a working owner.
She expected to be cleared for takeoff in April, but after an update with contractors this week, the cafe needs more runway before it can open.
We got confirmation from Walker Construction that we should be in here in June, being able to set up our stuff.
In phases, crews fixed the roof first, then gutted the walls and damaged interior. Right now, they're putting up new walls, setting up electrical and HVAC. Reopening in midsummer may not be as soon as expected, but that hasn't slowed down the excitement, especially for these student pilots who pass by every day.
It's the convenience of having it like right here, right next to school, and just being able to like get lunch right after school too. I'm really excited for it.
When the doors open, Sandy says you should expect some new additions to the menu.
Gonna do some smash burgers.
And a surprise she promises will add to the charm customers already love about the community's cafe.
It's a beautiful building. It's part of our community and it needs to be restored correctly.
The flight plans for takeoff may be delayed, but Sandy is looking forward to the sound of happy customers to return. Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
The city's Plan Spokane 2046 is a comprehensive plan meant to guide how the city manages growth in the next 20 years. But one local group, Spokane Urban Nature, says they're concerned on how the plan may impact the local environment.
Over the next 2 decades, the city projects more than 23,000 new residents will move to Spokane, driving the need for more than 22,000 additional housing units.
Every resident in the city deserves to have access to wonderful areas like this.
Spokane Urban Nature warns part of the city's draft plan, the Environmental Impact Statement, could waive environmental review to speed up infill development, a move they say weakens protections for natural areas, wildlife, and tree canopy.
And if we don't have a review, then quite frankly, what we have is clear cuts and denuding of properties before anybody gets a chance to intervene.
Jeff Lambert, a founding member of Spokane Urban Nature, tells me he is still in support of high-density housing, but he says he wants protections in place. He brought me to High Drive on the South Hill and showed me by example what he does not want to happen.
Because that development across 195 is an example of an opportunity lost. So with a little bit of tweaking, they could have saved trees, they could have used the natural drainage. There's probably all kinds of things that they could have done, but it's not required, and this was easier.
When I asked the city about this, I was told the city of Spokane is not proposing any rollbacks of existing environmental protection. We are still in the public feedback phase, and addressing climate and environmental priorities is a central focus of the overall update.
Now, the city tells me the plan will be adopted sometime before the end of the year. I'm reporting in Spokane, Regan Gallo, KREM 2 News.
Welcome back to the KREM 2 News, a week in review. I hope you're having a great weekend. Let's get back to one more story you might have missed this past week.
Safety and acceptance. That's the mission of the Aurora Center in North Spokane on Post and Wellesley. The shelter aims to support members of the LGBTQ+ community who have faced hardships in traditional homeless shelters.
As people drive through North Spokane, they may just see the North Hill Christian Church, but inside is a new dedicated safe space. Shelter officials say the LGBTQ+ community faced harassment and discrimination in other traditional shelters. One woman who asked not to be identified says she spent the past 5 years moving between shelters and living on the streets. Now, 78 days sober, she's preparing to spend her first night at the Aurora Center, a place she says offers support without judgment.
And I think it's important for the community to learn that we're all human beings. We all deserve safety and warmth, no matter who we are.
Folks with the LGBT community, they don't feel comfortable or they feel targeted or harassed at other centers. And being homeless is just hard in general. So being here, we are welcoming of everybody.
The Aurora Center, run by Jules Helping Hands, provides 14 overnight beds. During the day, it's a place to warm up, eat meals, receive medical care and drug addiction treatment, while also connecting with housing resources.
The Aurora Center is open 24/7 and is now welcoming intakes. I'm reporting in North Spokane, Regan Gallo, KREM 2 News.
Keep it here for more news and weather updates throughout the weekend. And don't forget, you can watch our latest newscasts anytime on your schedule on KREM 2+. Download and watch right now for free. I'm Cody Proctor. Thank you for watching KREM 2 News Week in Review.